Okay, so I just went to dinner and I went to it's like a bar restaurant, and I sat at the bar because I'm alone. And by the way, I want to talk about alcohol. So this is preface. The energy of drunk people is like the exact opposite of my energy. um, I've had an interesting relationship with alcohol. I didn't have my first drink till I was 27, and God, the first sip I had hurt me right here. It felt like someone shot me with a taser. First sip, like just as it was in my mouth, and I was like, "What was that?" And I took another sip, and I didn't feel anything. And by 27, like I was at the Cheesecake Factory at Caesar's Palace, and I had a Jack and Coke, and it tasted like melted rubber or something. I was like, "Why do people do this?" And then I just like walked up the stairs and walked down the stairs to see like what it's like to be drunk. And then there's a video of me somewhere having my first shot that night, and it was a double shot of vodka, which is like tastes like rubbing alcohol. I don't know why I still hate Grey Goose. I mean, I won't drink anymore ever again, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I had never taken a shot, so I was just like drinking it with that face. So I probably didn't drink for a year after that. I just had like my first night, and then you know it took a while for me to experiment again. I think Halloween. My birthday's in May, so Halloween, I had like Jello shots and stuff like that. It's the first time I threw up. I was throwing up in the bushes at my mom's house, and I was just learning. Like I hate throwing up. Like I'd rather die. It's such a terrible feeling. So I learned not to have sugary drinks with. Actually, I started to drink like when I started going out. I was having whatever that whiskey that tastes like Christmas is, and it's like such a bad, like whatever's in there is actual poison, not just the alcohol. But I was having that and ciders, and I remember like I was crawling on the curb, the sidewalk, and had my face like on the ground, and I had never been more comfortable. It was interestingly, it was the funniest thing for a couple of my friends who I found out weren't actually my friends later. Um, and of course, they just wanted to see me like that all the time. They wanted me to drink myself till I make an ass out of myself. And when I was 28, so 10 years ago, I studied abroad in France. And I studied abroad in the north of France, and I studied abroad in the south of France. I made friends with the north of France kids. And then when it was time to go to south of France, I said goodbye to like the same class. Some people went to the south of France and some just went back to their home countries. And then there's a few guys from Miami that came, and they were in their 30s. And there was this guy, Brandon. And I hated him right away. The whole class hated him. Like his energy was off, and me and all the rest of the class was like, these Americans, huh? And this guy always, he was like going out of his way to try to befriend me, which I hate. And he was super nice. Like I remember he kept asking me like, "Hey, we're gonna go smoke weed. Do you want to?" And I was like, "I've never done drugs. No, thank you." He's like, "Hey, we're gonna go skip class and do this. Do you want to come?" I was like, "No, thank you." I kept shutting him down. And then it was his birthday. He invited the whole class out to this private beach in Nice. I forget what it was called. Villefranche, maybe. And I don't know if that's how you say it, but it sounds familiar. And like when I got there, he like left everyone to like, oh, this is where if you want food, it's here. If you want drinks, whatever. And then we got close, and then every day I hung out with him until the end of school. I started to ditch class with him. I started to go to the bars after school, and I wasn't ever exposed to that kind of thing. So like I was going to in Nice. There's a bar called Wayne's Bar, and all the expats go there. And the Miami guys, there's three of them, and it's the first time I said the guy's name, Brandon. Well, Brandon's dead now, so let me back up. So these three guys were having like a competition as to who can take the most girls home. Like they every night went home with a different girl. And I don't have friends like that. I never saw anything like that, honestly. I was pretty sheltered at the time. And I felt like, I was part of like the cool kids club. And I thought this guy did me such a favor by getting me out of my shell and showing me a good time and all this stuff. Uh, the night before our final, we're all out at a bar, that Wayne's Bar, until it closes. So Wayne's Bar closes, and then I think there was an after hours club called Pompeii, and the Miami guys just kept going. I don't do cocaine, so I went to sleep because we had a final in the morning. And I wake up, I go to class, and I see like Brandon's missing, but everybody else is there. And people are asking me what happened to him. I was like, I don't know. Like, he was there when I left. And we had plans to go to Ibiza together. I remember he was like, change your plans after class. Like once we finish, like come to Ibiza with us. We'll party. We'll do this. We'll do that. And it sounded fun. I was gonna. Then I take my test, my final, and then they say that apparently a bouncer grabbed one of the guys. His name is Ben, and then was like ejecting him because he thought he did something. I don't know. And then Brandon broke his hand on this bouncer's face, and they both got pepper sprayed, and I had to go like run into the ocean and rinse off and whatever. So Brandon in the middle of the night took a flight, like took a train and then a flight home, and never saw him again. But he gave me this gift, right? And I remember, here's the thing about Brandon. I had never met anyone like him. He had something that I haven't seen before, where like women would walk into the restaurant we're at and be like, right? And of course, he like pretty ugly, fat, skinny. He didn't care. He was just a notch in his belt, right? This kind of ties into something else I want to say, something I said earlier, actually. Because you're exchanging energy with all of these people, and how interesting that one day he messaged me on my birthday. He said something like, I don't know, life is short. Wish me well. I didn't notice anything weird. And the next thing I knew, Ben, one of the other guys, those guys both lived in Miami, so they were close. Was like, yeah, he's dying. He's got a pulmonary embolism. He's in hospice. Like he doesn't look the same. He lost all of his weight and all this stuff. And I was thinking I should go visit him, and then I thought, like, I don't. It's like we hung out one time for a week. Although I'm like distraught about it, I didn't really have the money or the time to go say goodbye. And he didn't tell me he was sick. He didn't say like anything. But he died at, I think he was 36. And it put a lot of things in perspective to me. Like it a lot of things started to connect because now I'm back to where I was before I met him. Not totally, but like this is the direction. And I thought this guy was an angel. I thought like, oh, like he really like meeting him changed the course of my life. And then the guy that had this way, this attraction, this whatever, um, it's like he sold his soul. It's like that trope, like the devil gives you what you want, and then you pay the price. So he lived a lot in that 36 years. He had sex with probably thousands of women. And where is he now? How many people remember him? Was it worth it? I think to him, yes. I think that's why he made that deal, right? That's why it turned that way. Now, two things is alcohol shortens your life. Drugs obviously shorten your life. Like one night of cocaine could end it. One night of drinking could end it. But the other thing is this concept of semen retention that I think is a spiritual law. I think, imagine if eternal life was just a matter of you not coming into a handkerchief or whatever it is you're doing, or banging a bunch of random strangers. Like, how many men in the world are actually like trying? I wonder. Because as soon as I started doing it, or stopped doing it, whatever you want to say, whenever I stopped, like, is porn, sex, like, I don't allow myself to have thoughts. Like, if I have a dream, like, I stop myself. And it stops. Like, you don't have to worry about it eventually. But it's a weird compulsion, and like everyone's used to it, so you just think that it's normal to have to do it. But what was interesting is when I thought about it, I was like, I wonder, like, if you just have a certain amount and then that's it. Like, once you hit a certain number, your vitality, something inside you just can't keep up. Your soul, your spirit, something is weak. Even though he looked good on the outside, I'm sure he took steroids, a lot of back knee, and alcohol for me. Now, I had some of the best memories of my life a night drinking. Like in Japan with my friend Danilo, who I met on the same trip. He was in the first 2 weeks in Lille. He lives in Rome, and I remember first, like, I went out in London, and then me and some friends, like, we all had the best time, and I was supposed to fly to Rome to visit Danilo the next day, and we were all so drunk and having so much fun. We all flew together, and that was like, now there's a big group. And then in Italy, I discovered absinthe, which is like absinthe di merda. Um, I had one shot and I was like violently drunk. Like, I was ready to fight anybody. And the rest of the guys in my group were like kept having shots. And I'll tell you a funny story. Like, eventually we shut the bar down. Like, we're there the whole time. And then I don't know if it's because unemployment is huge, but like all the young adult men, teenagers, maybe young 20s, are just out. And they were just sitting on this bridge. And as we're walking across it, like drunk, holding hands and whatever, they all surround us. And like there was 3 Italians and 3 visitors. So me and like 2 friends that I came with, and then my 3 Italian friends. Like 2 of them are brothers, and it's their friend. So we split up into 3 different groups. Like each Italian and each American were talking to a group of these younger kids, and they were just curious. Like looked like we were having fun. And I remember at one point I see like a scuffle, and I like start to stand up like are we having a fight? And then I could see like this group of people turning, right? And I would see my friend, and he was smiling. And then I'd see the turning, and the guy standing opposite him did not look like he was smiling. And as like I couldn't tell if I was like standing up ready to fight, and then I see they hug or something, and then situation diffused. I have a picture somewhere of a couple of the guys, one asleep in the toilet, one asleep holding the toilet, hugging it, and one asleep in the bathtub. I was the only one who made it into a bed. And then the next day, as we're recounting it, I think Danilo woke up at 8 p.m. The next night, when we were recounting it, I was like, what happened on the bridge? No one remembered. And then Danilo's younger brother didn't drink. He was too young. So he's like, I know what happened. Like these kids that we met all spoke Italian, not English. And each of them that broke off, like he was listening to the other conversations. So apparently this kid asked my friend a question, and Danilo translated as saying, this guy says you have a small dick. And my friend grabbed this kid by the wrists and said, you're going into the river, and dragged him to the edge to throw him off. He wasn't going to, actually, I think. And then all of his friends came and started like peeling one by one each finger, right? And I don't know, he has retard strength or something. They couldn't break his grip. So like when they were turning, he was laughing maniacally with like having a power trip because they couldn't break his grip. And then at the end, he hugged them and he said, just kidding, you're right. So what a funny memory. Wow. Like wouldn't trade it for the world. That was a great one. And there's another time in Japan, in Kyoto, I met with Danilo again, coincidentally. We went to Japan for 3 weeks, I think, in 2019. And in Kyoto, we went to a speakeasy that was owned by a French magician. The best drinks I've ever had, the best ambiance. It was like a very small, quaint thing. I hate the idea of anyone seeing this because I want it to stay small and nice. But like the French magician guy and someone he was friends with like took us out after they shut the bar down, and I had such an amazing time. And I was like, when I was drunk and happy, I was always recording myself and recording the moment, which is something I will miss. And I had another like Notte di Leone. I had another night like a lion. That's the title of the Hangover movie in Italian. So those things probably wouldn't have happened. I suppose that's how and like 1 out of 100 times, I'd have a memory like that. And then other times it's like, I was definitely over the limit but drove. I got into a fight or, something. A lot of the times, nothing happened, you know? And then as I started the spiritual journey, this came up again because I watched a YouTube video earlier where they're like, Christians are saying, Jesus turned water into wine, so how much is okay? First of all, that's the shittiest miracle of all time. It's really stupid. Like, add to the fact that you can't prove any of it happened. Like, people say Jesus did this or said that as if they were there. It's like, you have no fucking idea, honestly. Let's start with that. Secondly, you needed, at the time, alcohol to kind of purify a liquid. They didn't have drinking water. You have options. Now, let's take another fact. Alcohol is a poison. Like on your periodic chart, it'll tell you that. Every chemist will tell you that. Um, so, if consuming too much can kill you, how much is the right amount? I guess that's for you to decide. From what I have found out, for me personally, any amount. And as I became more spiritually awake and I tried to fall back asleep and drink again, not only did my body physically reject it, I would get like from one sip of alcohol, that like pain I was talking about is insane. It's a pain like I've never felt. It feels like all the liquid surrounding my brain disappears. I lose sleep. Like for a week, I'll lose sleep. My body's not normal. My digestion's not normal. Everything, all of a sudden, I feel the effects as if I have been poisoned. So, when you're used to, hair of the dog, when you're used to poisoning yourself often, do you feel that? No. But when I took long breaks, I'm taking like a year at a time, and then thinking like, one night, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And I kept thinking like, I'll just one night, like maybe on my birthday or maybe this and that. And then summer of 2023, I felt really restless. I felt like I was stagnant in my spiritual growth. I haven't met the wise old master that teaches me anything. Everybody has been like a bullshit artist, right? And it's before I read The Pilgrimage, but I flew to Spain and just drove through it. Had I known of The Pilgrimage, I would have looked for the signs. But interestingly, I went to the top of it. There was like this old mosque fort that was built on this mountain, and I saw it, and I told my friend, I was like, I want to go up there. Like this is what I want to do. Is just try. I just drove through and found my own like mountain to climb. So I see this fortress, and I'm like, I wonder what's up there. It's so high up, and we like hike up with my friend and her dog. She had a husky, which um, poor dog. It was so hot. I see the walls of this fortress, and I'm thinking like, what's going to be on there? I'm going to find treasure in there for sure. And we get to the top, and it's just a wall. And I was like, what the fuck? What a metaphor. It's like, this was nothing. Damn it. It was very hard to traverse back down. And we lost the dog for like 30 minutes. The dog found its own way down, and she was looking frantically on this mountain. Um, okay, and then we get to Valencia. And Valencia was magic. I liked it. I don't speak Spanish, but it's not, I live in Southern California. That's North Mexico. I'm familiar with it. I can get around. And my friend, she was my roommate. Now she lives in Spain. She moved there. So that was my first attempt at. I thought I was gonna have like a solo trip and blah blah blah, and I just didn't want to be alone. So went around with her. And then when we were in Valencia, thought it was a beautiful city. I met like this Persian lady who moved from I think San Francisco there, and she was like really trying to sell me on it. And the people there are beautiful. The weather's nice. The like you know, I had been so sick of the vibe in California. Everyone fake and everyone the wrong vibe for me. For me, I'm not better than anybody. I'm just out of place, I guess. So, of course, Ibiza, sorry, is a ferry away or a flight away. And I was like, we should maybe go. And then there was one of my favorite DJs was there, Kygo. Just happened to be there. Like, I don't think I planned that. So we go to Ibiza and we're like chilling on the beach with the dog. And then some guys that um, promote for a club started asking us or chatting to us and saying, do you have plans for tonight or whatever? David Guetta's playing at this place. And I was like, I'm reading, I forget what book I was reading, the Hermetica or something. Like, really, like, this is totally the opposite of go out and party. And I hadn't gone out, partied, or drank in a long, long time, months and months and months. So I had this thought, like, I had already learned drinking is bad, but I was like, blue pill, let me just go have a night and have fun and not care and see what happens. I get kidnapped and extorted by the Russian mafia and almost lost my right eye. Now, they cracked my rib. And then I said, when they told me to pay them, that they'd have to kill me. And in the moment, I meant it. To be fair, I did not know it was the mafia, but I was very confident, not because of the alcohol, but because I have this, I can see what you're capable of in your eyes thing. And it was like I was testing, subconsciously, I was testing both my faith in God and my ability to see like true evil versus, I don't know, like they weren't dead in the eyes, but when like a cat sees prey and it's in that mode and you can't snap it out of it. Like they took me out of the club. This is the people who own the club, the Russian mafia. Surprise. Um, they own the entire island apparently, so the police work for them. And they're like, "Oh, come outside. We want to show you your bill." Like I had already signed a bill at my table. Like, why are you taking me outside? They take me outside and show me a bill for like way more than I agreed to. And I was like, oh, you're trying to mess with me. No, that's not happening. And then I get surrounded. And then they're like, you're going to pay. I was like, I'm not going to pay. It's like, you're going to pay. I was like, I'm not paying shit. One guy chokes me from behind. The guy that was hitting me had to be 3 times my width. And like, these are bouncers. Like, these guys hurt people, like, especially in Europe. It's not like America. I would probably own that club if this happened in America, but this is just a common occurrence, right? They didn't care what happened to me. So as I'm getting hit, I didn't lose consciousness, but I was super drunk. So I don't remember how I got hit in the ribs. And then, when you're in danger, all of a sudden you sober up. So like I was all of a sudden I was super clear. It's like the adrenaline does something. And here's an interesting tidbit: is the guy who like ran the club. His name is Borja. Borja, I could tell, was a weak man. And me, when I see weakness, I can't help myself. I knew that he worked for a scary man and he was not one. Of course, he was the boss, so he's ordering these guys, these thugs, to hit me. And then after they hit me, and I was like, you have to kill me. You don't understand. Like, there's nothing you can do to me. You have to kill me. And then they're trying to like convince me. And once I realized, like, I'm looking in the eyes of the men who just did it to me, and like, no, like there's a lot of questions to answer if I go missing, right? And whatever scheme they got going on would be very much at risk if I died, I'm sure. And they also do this to out of town tourists all the time, obviously. So I asked Borja what his name is, and he said Borja. I was like, Borja? I thought it was faggot. And then like I made one of the bouncers laugh, and then I was like, ah, like now I'm having fun. I have never called a gay person that word. I realized, yeah, you're not supposed to use bad words, whatever. That's what I said. I could tell he had a fragile ego. I'm sorry. Um, and he was wearing a shirt mocking God. Granted, it was like Catholic nuns spanking each other or something. Like, this is the guy running the club. He's not even wearing a suit or anything. Um, but I also, like, that just said everything, right? Like, that was like, this is a spiritual battle. This guy represents one side, I represent the other. And I read this man so clearly. I even read the man that was hitting me. And I stood up to Borja, which caused him great frustration. So he started to say, well, you can't leave till you pay. I was like, that's fine, I'll hang out. He said, we'll call the police and said you brought a gun and threatened to shoot people. I was like, okay, you can call them, I'll wait. So he like ran out of ammo, and then I was smiling. He was like getting in my face. I was like, you have nothing. I felt unstoppable. Like my eyes swollen shut, and I'm like, you're a bitch. I was talking shit the whole time. And then my friend was looking for me, Amber, and she sees me and she sees the condition I was in, and she immediately freaks out. She's like, "What the fuck just happened? Like everything was fine, and now." And then because she was shaking, scared. Because she was scared, they tried to extort her. Um, they tried to run her credit card, and it didn't go through. And then she's like, Matt, they're not letting me leave. I was like, Amber, just call the police. I didn't go through this for nothing. Like, calm down. Like, if I'm okay, you're okay. She's like, no, you don't understand. They're not letting me leave. And I was like, ah, fuck. Like, I proved my point. I can't traumatize her. So, gave them my credit card. And then when he printed the receipt, I signed it. Borja is gay. And he said, sign the way your credit card or your ID says. So it's like, this is how I sign my name. So somewhere American Express has my receipt that says Borja is gay. Now, interestingly, I was like looking for a spiritual experience. And though I didn't get the one that I thought I'd get, I got one for sure. Now, when I came back and I was telling people what happened, they're like, oh my God, do you have PTSD? Like, do you need therapy? I was like, what do you mean? That was my therapy. Like, all the spiritual stuff that I've been reading and learning about or whatever, I got to see if I actually believe in it. Because you don't know how you'll act in a life or death situation. But when I was looking at those men, I'm surrounded and they're giants. And I was like, God will intervene. Like, I have no doubt. Like, you have no power here. You shall not pass. And then I was like, if I'm supposed to die here, I'm supposed to die. And like, I'm sure that um, they would have karmic retribution or something. And I did my due diligence. I went to the hospital. I went to two different hospitals. I went to the police station to file a report, and the police are like, "Yeah, this happens a lot." I'm like, "Yeah, no shit, because you guys are their friends." And then what can I do? Leave a Yelp review. Um, so it's just money, you know. I still have my eye. I still have my rib healed, and I learned like I asked God going into it for a lesson, and that was a very strong lesson. Now, the day after, like after the hospital and all this stuff, Amber was by herself wandering around and met like a girl from Chicago. And then somehow they became friends, then we became friends with her and her friends, and then we went to see Kygo perform at a different club, same club owner though. So I went straight back into the belly of the beast, like nothing happened there. Like it wasn't like a matter of like you can gamble, I suppose. And it was me kind of like there's a video of me somewhere, like my eyes swollen shut and a drink in my hand, having the time of my life. And it was like I didn't allow it to defeat me, you know? But I don't know if I had a sip after that, honestly. I'm not sure what my last drink was. I'm pretty sure I had a drink or two somewhere. And my body just couldn't handle it. So I was like, okay, spiritually, let's say the devil's real. Let's say you are an evil spirit and your job is to influence people. Wouldn't you wait in a club, at a festival, wait for someone's defenses to come down, and then attach yourself to them? And then if you're a demon of sex, of gluttony, of whatever it is, don't you think that explains why people do things that are so out of character while drunk or inebriated or whatever? Right? The devil stalks like a lion in the night, right? Um, so I learned by asking. So, like, a lot of times when I wonder, like, is this good or bad, I'll ask God and then I'll go through it and then I'm like, okay, I understand. And when I feign ignorance, because I'm at a certain level in my spiritual journey, so the rules are different. And when you renege, when you pretend you don't know the rules, your punishment is swift, it's immediate. And that has allowed me to test and retest my spiritual laws and understand them better. So I know for sure sex is a spiritual thing. And you should be prepared to defend yourself like to God, right? With whoever you're having sex with. Drinking is also bad. It is poison. And as I've become more awake, more conscious, there is no going back. I cannot do it. It disrupts everything. Like it's not just like imagine your hangover is not just a physical thing, but it's your ability to manifest in this world, your ability to create in this world, make money, be successful, be healthy, whatever. You're jeopardizing all of that for a night out with your friends. Some friends you have. So alcohol, I believe, for me, in my personal experience, is 100% off the table. And that is how I started. That is how I intended to live my life from the beginning. I was like super morally righteous when I was young. I wanted to save everything till marriage. I remember, I think when I was 16, I took a girl to her school dance and I didn't like her at all. And I remember I opened the door for her because I used to be a gentleman. And she jumped up and kissed me. It was my first kiss. And I felt like my soul left my body. I had like this plan for how it would be, and it would be the first, whoever I fell in love with, and then this like troll just jumped up and stole it. And I remember, like, I shut the door, I walked behind the car, and was like, opened my door, and then drove her home. And then here's the thing: is like, I'm not sure when, like, boners start. I don't remember. I hated every single one that I had. I remember like sitting in school in like junior high and be like, it'd be a terrible time to get a oh no, like your dick works against you your whole life, and but never more when you're going through puberty. There's that thing like my dick has taken me to places I wouldn't go with a gun. So like I wanted to see a naked girl my whole life, and then this girl obviously was like down. So I just like I just stopped caring, and then one by one the things that I held dear and my however I felt morally righteous, one by one I lost them. And then slowly now, in my ripe old age, I'm getting back to where I started. Now, here's another thing. When I talk about brahmacharya and controlling your thoughts, like when they say good thoughts, good words, good deeds, the Zoroastrians said it, the Buddhists, and I believe the Taoists. It all starts with a thought. Every crime that's ever happened, every spiritual law that's ever broken starts with a thought. And how do a lot of thoughts start? What you look at, what you pay attention to. So as a kid, I remember like, I don't know how old I was, but there was a girl who was wearing like a low cut sweater, and when she bent over, like things were showing, and I instinctively turned away. Like, like a immediate. You ever see like a snake try to bite a cat? The cat's just faster. I was like, nope. I just had that innately in me. Like she didn't mean to show me anything. That's not for me. Do you realize how hard that is to get back? How I was like, it makes sense that as a child, things fell into place for me. I was very lucky. I found money all the time. Like, like I would wish for things that would happen. I remember Coke and or Pepsi and Mountain Dew or whatever they would have buy one get one free. Sometimes there was like a contest perpetually in the 90s. I don't know why. And I won like 80% of the time. I was too shy to turn them in and get a free thing, but I would sit there and like I would pick them and then I would sit there before I open and Schrodinger it. And at some point I lost it. This luck, this whatever you call that, wu wei. And I realized it's because no day as an adult, since I learned to cuss, since I started getting boners, have I ever lived this whole day without sinning once. I hate the word sin, but breaking spiritual law, whatever. I say bad words. I think negative things about people. I I'm sure I've done like actual terrible things as well, but like I think perhaps this place is hell and it is heaven. And it's a frequency you turn into. You can turn this place into either. If you're doing in drugs and partying and drinking, I promise you're in hell. You don't know it, but you are, because that's the vibration of hell. And that's why it's here. That's why you see the symbols on all their stuff. You see Monster Energy Drink, you see Red Bull, you see every alcohol company has something going on. They're telling you what it is, and you ignore it, or you think it's not real. But the result speaks for themselves, I assure you. Try it. Try getting rid of these vices. Try to cut fluoride out of your, you know, toothpaste out of your water. Get actual filtered water. Cut alcohol out. Cut sugar out. Cut nicotine, caffeine. Cut it all out. And just see. See if you see a difference. Not just that your skin clears up, that you look younger, that you become leaner. See if spiritually you find a difference, because I did. I 100% did. And now any one of those things, like I had an espresso shot when I was in Tulum with my dad. It was the last time I had caffeine on purpose. And I didn't sleep for 48 hours. I was like up staring at the ceiling, wishing. It's a drug, dude, caffeine. And everybody's addicted to it. You're all stampeding into Starbucks every morning to get on with your shitty lives. And instead of making your life not shitty, you take drugs. It's just a socially acceptable drug. Cigarettes, vapes. What are you doing? What are you doing? And then you think the world is out to get you when things don't go your way. What if it's you doing it? Because what I found is I was doing it. When I was in hell, surrounded by demons, when I thought my life was in danger, when I thought I'm going to die any second, I was asking for it. I was giving permission. So, spiritual law. I think getting high helped me realize a lot of things and talk to my subconscious mind, but that's a shortcut. And guess what happens when you take shortcuts? Now think of this. I was just talking to a friend about this, is what if your life has a path? And that path never included alcohol or partying or weed or mushrooms or cocaine or whatever, meth, whatever it is you're doing. Every time you partake, you're numbing yourself to your purpose, your connection to the divine, whatever that it means to you. You don't have to use the word God. You could say the universe. You could say your higher self. I don't care. Psychologically, whether you agree with this or not, Carl Jung said it, and I promise you it's true. You need to have some higher power. You decide which one. You decide for yourself. But psychologically, the human being needs it, because even people with perfect parents have this. Emptiness, this abandonment. And of course, there's no answer in science as to why humans have this. Like, it's why we invented God. It's like, well, maybe God programmed us to find him. Maybe if your instincts weren't all fucked up, you could talk to him and ask a question, because at certain points in my life growing up, I asked God for help. I didn't have a firm belief system. I didn't fall under any category, but I had a feeling God was a thing. And I asked God for help, and against all odds, sometimes it wasn't even a serious thing. I never abused it, but I remember coming back from Vegas with my cousins, my aunts and uncles, my parents, my siblings. And I remember it was a Sunday, and I was like, I don't want to go to school tomorrow. And I prayed to God for something to happen. And our van broke down, and we had the most fun, hanging out at a motel until the van was fixed. I think it took a couple days. And there's another time where this is gonna go long. I'm sorry, but I went to New York on a business trip. My brother and his friends were flying to New York for a friend trip, and I just tried to piggyback on it, do some work. And I remember I didn't sleep the night before because I was paranoid about missing my flight. And I get on the plane, and I'm thinking I'll sleep on the plane. It's 5 hours or something. Crying baby the whole time, rigid, right up seat. I'm not a vampire or whatever. I can't sleep like that. So I get in. It's 10 p.m. I have to be on the road at 5:30, a.m. And one of my brother's friends is like, "You're not gonna come out with us?" I was like, "I have to work in the morning. Like, you flew all the way to New York. You're not even gonna like look around." I was like, "Okay." I get home at 5:15 a.m. I kick my shoes off, set my alarm for 15 minutes, just fall asleep like a zombie, get up in 15 minutes, and then drive out to the boonies. I worked till 1 a.m. without eating, and my body was failing. I had like the flu all of a sudden, and I remember driving this shitty PT Cruiser going like this on the freeway, and I called my brother. I was like, "Hey, you need to meet me at the door. I'm like about to die, and I don't even have the energy to get up the stairs. Like, I need you to like meet me at the car." And he said, "I'm 2 hours away." And I was like, "So you want me to sleep in my car in New York City?" He's like, "Yeah." Some random coincidence, right in front of our Airbnb, there was a parking spot. So I get in the back of this PT Cruiser, kick my shoes off, fall asleep. I have no idea how much time passed. But I wake up to my brother knocking on the window. And I remember like I barely could open my eyes. I was like, "What?" And he's like, "What the like he's been knocking for a while." And I look at my shoes and I look at him. I was like, there's just no way. Like there's no way I'm getting down there, and there's no way I'm getting out that door. Somehow, like very slowly, like grab my stuff, and then he walks me up. He said, "Have you eaten yet?" I said, "I haven't eaten since yesterday." He's like, "Okay, I'll get you pizza." And then I rolled around on the floor so I wouldn't fall asleep. And then I was like hallucinating. And then I inhale this pizza and fall asleep on the floor in the living room. And I don't know how much time passed, but my brother wakes me up. He's like, "Hey, you need to drive our friend to the hospital." I was like, "No, I don't. I have to drive to New Jersey in the morning for work." He's like, "No, you need to take her." I was like, I promise you I don't." He's like, "Come here." And I was like, "Ugh, like just kill me already." So I go to the other room. Someone had roofied her at the bar they were at. Her eyes were rolling in the back of her head. She looked like she was possessed. And I was like, "Okay, if we're going, we have to go right now because I have to work in the morning." Like I had like, and then I guess they decided they just would take turns watching her. They decided they would just pump her stomach, and if she needed it, they'd take her, but whatever. The next morning, I wake up, go to New Jersey, work, come back, have some fun, and then that night, looking for a parking spot in New York, guess what? There aren't any. My brother sees this like a paper sign that says "Don't park here." My brother's like, "Just park here." It's like, okay. Guess what? Wake up in the morning, no PT Cruiser. It has been towed. So everybody leaves. Me and my brother spend the entire day, like 8 or 10 hours at like the Port Authority or whatever it is. Um, and like these ladies with nails like this that type like this, that every time you ask them a question, they tell you to shut the fuck up and sit down. I was there for 3 shifts of women like this, and my paperwork was just sitting in the fax machine, and they wouldn't. They just someone had to do is grab it and hand it to me, and they could leave. So we missed every single flight that day. We rescheduled, right? And finally we get out. My brother turned into a libertarian that day. He's like, "If this was a private enterprise, we would have been in and out. Fuck the government." And he's been hard writing that line since then. That's what turned him. Everything happens for a reason, huh? So we're driving, and I have this philosophical thing on my mind. I was like, you know, we grew up in the same house, so like we kind of think the same. And I was like, "Do you believe in God?" He's like, "No." I was like, I'm inclined to side with you, but every time I've asked God for something, like, and I mean really ask, it's come true. It's come to pass. And he's like, "Oh, there's a logical explanation for it or whatever." I was like, I'm going to start praying that we make our flight. Now let's say it's like 6 p.m. Our flight's at 6:30, and we have 30 minutes to get 30 miles in New York City traffic and check our luggage and make this flight. So it's obviously not happening. And like he's on the phone with JetBlue rescheduling the flight to be the last flight. There was one more flight after this one if we missed it. So he's on the phone, and I'm like, I prayed out loud, I prayed in my head, and I was like smiling. I knew. And then I remember, hold for your confirmation, sir. She comes back. She's like, your flight's been delayed. You're going to make it. So stuff like that sat with me. It's like, that was like a, thank you. It's like, way to go. Now, if that's me manifesting, if it's my higher self helping me, if it's God, if I am God, if it's Vishnu, Shiva, Muhammad, whatever, something happened, right? Now, after like a crazy heartbreak I had, where I thought like I was gonna marry someone, and then I was like, every time I think I know what direction I'm supposed to go, I'm wrong. I remember it was like Christmas time. I was in San Diego with my brother, his wife, my dad, and his girlfriend, and it was raining for 2 weeks straight. So like, it's California, so nothing's open when it's raining. There's nothing to do. So I was sitting in my hotel room waiting for dinner. We just had dinner plans. And I was sitting there like, it's like a movie, like single tear coming down my cheek. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, what is this? And I remembered like that New York trip and things that happened when I was a kid. And I was like, in a moment of desperation, I said, God, can you give me a sign that you exist? And the first time in 2 weeks, the clouds opened up. A single light came through my closed blinds, closed curtains, right onto my body. Just my body, the rest of the room dark. And I was like, wow. Now, that is either the craziest coincidence of all time, or I need to start learning about God. And that started my journey. Because by that time, like, I was supposed to marry into this Christian family, and when that ended, I was like, I was wrong about God completely. There's no God, obviously. I was dumb to think so. And then my version of God came through. The one that I had been in contact with my whole life. I didn't need these people. I never lost God. I forgot. And you don't forget when you're born, interestingly. You forget when life doesn't treat you fair. Every single atheist I know is hurt. If you are an intelligent person and you don't believe, the most you can be is agnostic, because you don't have all the information. It's impossible for you to have all of the information. If you disagree with that statement, you have some work to do. Now, if you're completely closed off, I don't know how you would see anything. But the times that I have asked for proof, I got it. And the times that I asked for intervention, I got it. When I needed protection, I got it. The only times I didn't is when I didn't ask, when I didn't believe, or something that was ultimately for my benefit that I didn't realize. So, like a temporary loss for an ultimate gain. Because I have to say, as much as I complained growing up, I thought I had a terrible childhood and I held everything, like, every slight against me I remembered. I had the perfect experiences to create an adult that has every material possession you could want. More free time than anyone I know who's employed. I make a great amount of money for the amount of effort I put in. I'm very efficient at my job. I still enjoy it after 15 plus years. And now I'm on this path, this alchemical path, to find and discover some hidden treasure that Da Vinci talked about, a Rosicrucian, that Jung talked about, that all of these great minds all came together and like made their own version of, this is how I found God. I'd like to do a full video on Jung, but I'd like to say one thing. Just like I asked for God, for a sign. Carl Jung analyzed people's dreams just like Freud. He was a student of Freud, and he started a competing school of psychology because he incorporated spirituality. He was in touch with it. He knew there was something more that Freud was missing. Now, he was analyzing a patient's dream, and this patient was dreaming about a scarab beetle, like those beetles you see in ancient Egypt. It's a very symbolic beetle. Supposedly, this is the symbolism, is the dung beetle pushes the sun across the sky. And it's also a symbol of rebirth, because the dung beetle would, obviously its eggs are in the dung, so it would crawl into a hole and then out comes more beetles. So it was like this symbol of completion and rebirth. So he's asking the patient, like, what do you think it means? And she's like, dreams don't mean anything. And he's hearing a tapping at the window. And it's annoying him, and he opens the window, and in flies a beetle. And he said, this is synchronicity. This is the universe saying you're on the right path, and saying I'm here and I'm listening and I'm watching. And that term, synchronicity, is how you find God. The divine, if that phrase has lost its meaning now, because it did for me. People, in Iran, they have religious clerics that execute children because they showed their hair. And they tell people that God elected them to do this. They're saying their God is so weak, he needs these men to carry out his plans. That tells you everything about the belief, that they don't actually believe. And that's not God they're doing anything for. And unfortunately, religious people are the worst thing to ever happen to religion. I went to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem while I was on my spiritual quest. And I watched people dressed like they're from 1,000 years ago, like crying and jumping up and down. And I was like really looking, like, what is it? And like, even the different types of Jews didn't talk to each other. Like, everything, it was segregated, male and female, and the female one was like way smaller. Like, it's like, they were wearing hats made out of yak or whatever. And I'm like, like, is this it? Is this the answer? Like, they're so sure. But I've never seen like a group of people try so hard to look superior. And if there's anything I know, if God made you, he made your enemies too. And if you are outnumbered, like, doesn't it mean God is Chinese then? Like, why would God favor certain people? It's a very bizarre, and there's a new conquering force and a new chosen people every so often. And it's fucking ridiculous. We should be past this. So rather than read books written by documented liars, why don't you ask God yourself? Because he's constantly answering you. You're just not paying attention. And when I started paying attention, like if every religious book was incinerated, and if everyone had that Men in Black mind erasing thing happen, do you think in a million years these religions would return exactly like the names would be the same, the stories would be the same? Of course, the concept of God would return. There's always a civilization is too smart, and then they have to invent a new version of God. There's been so many versions of God throughout history, and it gets the civilization to the next step. And then they become too smart again, and then they lose it, and then the empire falls. God necessarily has to be for everyone. And even this concept of heaven, hell, devil, like, don't you think God would forgive the devil? Because one, he created him, right? And then two, the devil's fucking us, which I'm like, I hope God doesn't want for us. So I have questions, So the math needs to add up. So I've never heard a religious person tell me a single thing that I was like, okay, no more questions. But when I ask questions, I get answers. So as I'm figuring out what spiritual laws are for me, I don't know if they're universal, but I do think that everybody can test spiritual law for themselves, kind of like the way that I have, and just observe not just your own life, but the life of people around you. I guarantee you there's a pattern. Now, I might be the daywalker of the autism community, and my job is recognizing patterns. Like, that's what I do for work, and it's why I'm good at my job, is I see the patterns in code. And there's pattern out there and in here. The Fibonacci sequence, that spiral, that's the galaxies follow the same mathematical equation, and it's on a snail shell as well, determines how the human body grows. It determines how many leaves are on a tree, how many roses are on or how many petals are on a rose. It looks random to us, but it's working according to code. Fibonacci sequence is code. So that either means there's an architect or this is a simulation of some sort. Necessarily. So, is it hackable, the simulation? That's what I'm doing. I hack the computer and exotic cars to make them faster. And I'm the best in the world at this. And this is an alchemical process. I take something from its base state to its enlightened state. So I've been secretly an alchemist this whole time. I just need to apply it to the world now. And that is what I'm doing. And that's what I intend to do with my life. I sign all my files, The Alchemist. And weirdly, I was attached to that name as a kid. I remember Mobb Deep had like a producer called The Alchemist. And even before that, like when I heard it, I was like, oh, Alchemist. I always had an affinity for it. I feel like I'm a reincarnated alchemist. So keep your Super Bowl party. Keep your Clase Azul, whatever it is you're drinking. I'm trying to decode the world and find God. And maybe, just maybe, I can save some people and myself by following spiritual law. Now, the last thing I'll say about spiritual law is there's a book called The Kybalion that I read. It's Hermetic Principles. if you read this, whatever this simulation is, whatever God has created for us, there's a framework of rules and laws for the universe. Spiritual laws are built on top of these. So, like, there's the law of vibration, correspondence, mind, mentalism, polarity, gender. And I think this should be taught to every human being. And then when you have that as a framework, go out into the world and find out for yourself if the things you are doing are for your benefit or not. And see what happens when you experiment. When you clean up your diet, when you clean up your thoughts and your actions. And I promise, you'll see. I promise. It's the only thing I'm sure of. Now, like, who, when, like, I don't have answers for that. I don't know what to call God or where he came from or whatever. Like, maybe I'll get there. But this is my path. And whatever I learn along my path, I will share. And unfortunately, this is how I do it. No, this was 1 hour, 11 minutes. I'm sure that was an accident. Synchronicity. Bye.